first episode of our book club. I'd like to thank you guys for joining us today. It is August the 5th, and we are continuing our studies in magic, our book club, not our studies in magic. That's a separate live stream. But this book in particular is one of my favorite books. A little history, a little background on the book. This is Sleight of Hand by Edwin Sachs. Hopefully you guys all got the PDF that I sent you, either through email or through Facebook, and I've been enjoying it. It actually took me a lot longer to prepare the ebook than I thought it would, and simply because I didn't realize how big it was. It is a big book, and so the edition you should have received, the Before Magic edition, is based on the second edition, which is greatly enlarged, published in 1885. And I'm not too sure when the first edition was published. I should look it up, but I believe it was either the same year or maybe the year before. But I know that it was renewed for a second edition very soon after the first edition. It was greatly enlarged and expanded. And after that, there's been a third edition, which changes it up a little bit. We're not focusing on the third edition. However, if you do want to search up the third edition, there's a great trick in there called blindfold divination, which we will not be talking about today because it's not in the second edition, but I read about it in the third edition. It's a great book. Okay, so to get to Sleight of Hand, I have it open here as a PDF. Let's see. So a little background on this book and the author. I'm not too sure. There's no indication that he performs professionally. I have not been able to find that indication on Edwin Sachs. And the text is quite confusing. Sometimes you read certain passages and you're like, wow, this guy has a lot of experience working professionally. And then there's other passages that you read that indicate the total opposite. And you think, wow, this guy never performed magic before in his life, or at least he never performed this trick. There is a lot of magic in this book, over 400 pages of magic. I don't know how many tricks that is. Probably over 100 tricks in this book. I haven't done a count, but there is a lot of magic in this book, and I am very skeptical that he is intimately familiar with all of them. I think he wanted to describe all the magic that you could do with sleight of hand, and he knew how all of it worked. And it's one of the things that's very common for us in magic. We know how things work, but we don't necessarily have direct experience performing it. So you have to look at it with that in mind. Some of the stuff he writes contains a lot of detail and it's really, these gems, and other stuff, you read it and you're like, I don't know if this would work. But so going through the beginning of the book, I believe this is maybe in the introduction, in the first few pages, right before part one, he talks about what you need as a magician, covers some of the basics that we all have. But one of the things that he mentions is a wand. And this is something I feel that's very overlooked by magicians today. Most magicians today will not be performing with a wand. They feel that it's, this ancient device. It doesn't fit in with modern performances. And I would disagree. I think you can look totally ridiculous with a wand, but it's also this iconic thing in magic that everybody knows what it is, even if they don't perform magic or, have seen a magician. Everybody knows that the magician uses a magic wand. And he describes having one made from a walking stick maker. By the way, he mentions a lot of, he mentions a walking stick maker, he mentions a glass maker, a tin maker, he mentions all these makers, and get an ebony turner to turn this piece of ebony for you. He talks about all these people who had these craftsman skills that don't really exist anymore. If you do a search on the internet for a walking stick maker, there's very few walking stick makers these days. There's very few people working with tin who can just spin, a little piece of tin for you that you can make into a little bowl or a gimmick. It is a lot harder to have all of this stuff made. As we've gone on in history, we've sort of lost all these skills that people used to have for themselves. And although people always bought magic from magic shops and magic dealers, there was more of an inclination, I feel, previously for magicians to really create and build their own props and acquire their own props, research it. And it's sort of what I'm trying to do. You can see behind me, I've sourced these really old cups. These are for the cups and balls. This is from a company called Brema, which is just super high quality. I believe these are from the 1940s. These are really old and hard to get, but they're really, and there's things that you can do with them. When you research the cups and balls and you read a lot of books on it, there's certain things that you can do with these cups. Well, we're not talking about it in this live stream, that you cannot do with other cups. This is my practice board. This is homemade. This is another wooden board that I used to practice and perform on. That is custom made. And in another thing, we'll talk about all these things on how to make certain props in different live streams, or I would be stuck talking about them. But it used to be a thing that the magicians would source their own material and perform with it and have really custom made props. Okay, I'm going to stop going. I can go through my shelf and literally go through all my different magical items, my coin purse, my rings, just everything, but I won't do it right now. But he does describe it getting a wand made, and I actually agree with him. I don't know about the size. He describes getting a wand made that's 18 inches, which is 1.5 feet long. It's pretty long. I don't know. It's like this long. And getting that made out of ivory, getting it made out of ebony and then having it fitted with ivory, silver, or brass ferrules, not caps, countersunk at each end. What's interesting about this, even some of the materials he's listing, ivory, you're not there used to be an ivory trade. That doesn't exist anymore. You cannot just buy ivory and get somebody to turn a piece of ivory for you and stick it on the end of the wand. You cannot do that anymore. It's not how it works. Ivory, by the way, in a lot of places is illegal to trade and sell and buy because they're taken from endangered animals such as elephants and so on. Okay, so anyways, he talks about making a wand. I highly recommend it. The reason I recommend it is I don't have a wand. I'm getting a wand made. I believe that your wand should be whatever you feel like it should be when you're performing. I would love to have a small little wand like my friend Eric Rumenstein. I don't know if you know who Eric Rumenstein is, but if you look him up, he's a fantastic, fantastic magician, wonderful coin worker. He's from France, from Strasbourg, and he has a few DVDs and videos out on the subject of coin magic, and he does a lot of street magic. He's just fantastic, and he has a wand that he fashioned out of an old drumstick, and it's the most simple thing. It's literally just a wooden cylinder, like a type wand. There's no protrusions. There's no dips in the wood. There's really nothing. It's just a flat cylindrical wand, and it looks good. It works well. It lasts a while. But and if you do want to make a wand, so by the way, this piece. So I'm not going to go through construction of this, but this is one of my practice boards, and this is made out of a piece of wood. This is made out of a piece of actually, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it right now, but this one down here is made out of a walnut. And so to have this made, I sourced a company that sold walnut, and they sold me a piece of walnut, and I also got them at the same time to carve it down, sand it, make it into certain dimensions. I had to make it into the dimensions of my laptop actually, because I would always find myself working on my laptop on my couch and then closing my laptop and practicing on the back. And for me, it became like this little table that I could still do all of my manipulations on my lap um, when I'm doing, close-up magic, but I could also then have a surface because one of the problems with me performing close-up magic many times is the table is too high. So when I would have to take the cards down to shuffle on my lap and stuff, the deck would disappear from people, which is not good when you're performing magic to make the deck or other objects disappear to do something. It's very suspicious. So working with this little board, it's sort of like this little table that I have on my lap. It's a solid surface. And I had that made. I love it. I've had it for just over a year now. Actually, maybe a year and a half. Absolutely love with it. And it's really a custom piece. When you do make stuff out of wood and you find the wood that you like, and I don't have the skills yet. I plan to develop woodworking skills to make certain props, but I didn't have the skills yet. So I found somebody to do it for me. All in all, the labor on sanding it down to a certain size and making it all nice with a nice lacquer at the end wasn't too expensive, and it's a beautiful piece. So I would that's what I'm doing for myself right now. I'm trying to find somebody close to me who can turn wood, and then I'm going to buy a probably a board of wood or a block of wood, depending on how thick it needs to be. And we're going to make some wands, some really, really beautiful wands. I feel like I might make it out of ebony. I might use a nice rosewood. I might use a walnut. I'm really fond of walnut. Just because it's dark. It's not as dark as this, but when you get a nice lacquer on it, it becomes like a nice dark. This is not walnut. This is like fake walnut, but it has this like nice brown color. Not as brown as this, but like it sort of looks like this. Anyways, uh, I could talk about wood all day. I'm really interested in wood and working with wood, and so it's like one of my little side projects that I'm working on next, which is just building my own props out of wood and learning the whole process. But yeah, definitely get a wand made. There's some people who use metal wands, or some people who use just all sorts of wands. And it's one of those things that people can comment on. Well, it's something that you can almost use as a joke. And there's nothing wrong with introducing a prop or introducing a story with a joke. There's one of my tricks that I do. I think I talked about this before. Arturo Descanio's Aces with Love. And I tell it with that original story that he tells, which is, about the aces being a family, and they're all being separated by life, their obligations, new commitments, new friends, and all that stuff. And it's like this weird story that you would, usually hear a kid tell during a card trick, but it's like this philosophical version. So when I introduce the story, it sounds funny, but as we go on and on through the routine, it becomes more and more serious and beautiful and poetic. So that's sort of my idea behind the wand. When you first pull out a wand, I just feel like most people are going to think it's silly, like, not only are you a magician, but you're pulling out a wand. Interesting. And you can sort of, not that you need to denegregate yourself and, abase yourself, but I think it's okay to introduce it as this, like, yeah, this is what magicians traditionally use. This doesn't have power, but if it did have power, it would look something like this. We don't need to use this, and and going on, but just find a way. to introduce a wand and just have it, because I feel like having a wand as a magician is just a classic thing. It's just very iconic, very classic. If you can figure out a presentation where you can introduce a wand, maybe you don't use it for your whole show, maybe it's not out for your whole show, or maybe you want to do the cups and bowls, or you want to do a coin routine, or a I don't know, some routine that requires the use of a wand, and you're having a hard time doing it because you don't want to use a wand, really consider using a wand. And it helps having a nice wand. One of the other things that I'm working on, just in the same line as this, is the color changing knives, which Arturo Descanio wrote a whole book about. This book right here, I actually have two versions of it: The World of Knives and Knives and Color Blindness. I believe they're the same exact books. They're just published a few years apart. This is the English translation. Maybe the illustrations are different. I forget. Anyways, but they were published by different publishers. And one is part of the Ascanio set, and one is just a reprint of the English translation. Great books. And I was always in love with that color changing knife routine. You know, watching Juan Tamariz do it so well. If you haven't seen Juan Tamariz do the color changing knives, look it up. It's beautiful. And Ascanio, who obviously was very fond of the plot, he wrote a whole book about it. And so it's something that I was drawn towards, and I searched online. I looked at all the magic dealers. None of them had good color changing knives. And then a few years ago, Dan and Dave put out a really nice set of color changing knives with Buck Knives. They collaborated with Buck Knives, and the color changing knives I don't think has ever looked as good. Unfortunately, they're sold out. I don't even have a set for myself, but it just inspired me because for the first time, I realized, wow, I can actually do the color changing knives in different routines, and I don't have to use these props that look weird. I feel like so many magicians are afraid of doing things with props because the props look bad. You know, we're used to the Tenyo style prop, which is plastic boxes and levers, and it just looks cheap. It feels cheap. Not that Tenyo is cheap. Tenyo is actually very expensive, but we're used to props that may not fit us individually as a performer. So it's very important to realize that rather than dismissing the whole prop, think about how could you do it. Maybe that involves you sourcing your own props. And if it's not a special gimmick, then these props are easier to find. Maybe it's a champagne glass, maybe it's a top hat. You know, you can source proper props and do the magic that you want to do. So yeah, I just want to make a note on that. Actually, I have to make a note for myself. Carl Bremma. Here we go. So I'm so bad at this. A beautiful thing went in last auction and I missed it, and I shouldn't have missed it. It was a beautiful prediction canister. It was actually owned by Del Rey. But actually it went for more than I would have paid. It went for $600. But it was a prediction canister from Carl Bremma, owned by Del Rey, and it was beautiful. It's made out of brass, and it has these 3 enamels color plates, and it's like a mentalism routine. You put these in, and the spectator takes one out, and you do mentalism. But the props just they have this old school quality, and it doesn't look like, you know, this weird thing. It just looks like a canister with these little discs inside. Anyways, I missed that. $600. That is really expensive for a little canister. I wonder who bought that. I'm jealous. Anyways. So yeah, source your props. And this book talks a lot about different props. Another thing that he mentions in the introduction, and we're not going to go over every trick, we're going to sort of stop at a few tricks or things of note. But one of the things he talks about, which I thought was really, really good, he breaks magic into two categories. He calls the first category drawing room magic, and the second category grand magic. And so drawing room magic for him is any magic that you can do in a small room, sort of like a living room style room, or in a like a sort of like a bar setting, a restaurant setting, where there's a small crowd of people. And then anything that's larger than that, he totally, I think drawing room magic sort of encompasses parlor magic as well, because it also, I mean, drawing rooms don't have to be small. They can be larger rooms with a fireplace and the whole family can get together, and there can be a parlor type magic show. But he goes further than that and also talks about grand magic, which is magic that's done in the theater, magic that's done on a larger scale, and those are his two classifications. And I thought it was very clever just to talk about, just to distinguish those different areas, because in the book he talks about several routines, and there's two versions. One in the drawing room magic section, which I probably, to give it a modern update, would call it the real world magic. I would call it real world magic just because it's magic that you're performing in the real world, where grand magic is more you're performing in a theatrical setting where you're in control of the environment. I feel like that's those are where you separate them. So anyways, just very right off the bat, he goes into that, and the book is broken, I believe, into two parts: strong room magic and grand magic. And so he starts off with coins, and he talks about, and it's funny, the coins that he mentions are much more expensive when they were when this book was published, but he's talking about starting with these coins because they're so inexpensive. However, if you want to get a coin from the 1800s to perform sleight of hand with, it would be a lot of money right now. But he goes over the most basic techniques, the thumb palm, the different transfers, reverse palm, and the illustrations in this book are beautiful. I'm not too sure who illustrated it. I don't remember there being a credit for the illustrator. A lot of these old books and posters and everything, they didn't give credits to the illustrators, which is unfortunate. And then the first section starts off with tricks with coins. Let me just go over the brief little index for this chapter to see if there's anything of note. All very classic stuff. So he uses a few things. He uses a wand, and he also uses handkerchiefs. Handkerchiefs are another item that you do not see today. I mean, they're still around, but you don't see them. The same thing with gloves, theater gloves. People don't wear them these days, but it would not be unusual if you were to have one. If you were dressed up in a style of clothing that it was normal to have a handkerchief in your pocket, whether that's an exposed handkerchief or whether it's just in your pocket hidden away, by all means use a handkerchief. And again, always use sort of the best quality that you can, and something that you find suits you and suits your magic. We're going to be talking about handkerchiefs in a second with one of these pieces because it's extremely important, but he basically goes over just everything you would. There's like 40 tricks in the coin section. It's ridiculous. So we won't go through all of them, but we'll just sort of skip through. Again, the illustrations just fantastic. Really beautiful. By the way, for this edition, the Before Magic edition, I've colorized the illustrations. They just felt like, to me, I was always just, I don't know, it sort of just struck me that they should be sort of red. So I made all the illustrations with a reddish tinge. So it hasn't changed the quality of the illustrations. It just helps them pop off the page more. Sorry, I'm just scrolling as I'm doing this. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about this trick, but there is a trick on page 14, and the illustration's on page 15. But the illustration reminds me. So in the illustration, he's holding a top hat, and he's doing sort of, I believe, a miser's dream type routine with a hat. And again, the tips here are so good. We usually see the miser's dream performed with a metal pail. And if this is the trick that he's talking about, maybe another trick, but the hat, and I know that he talks about the miser's dream in this, so this is why I'm talking about it. Because he's using a regular borrowed hat, like a top hat, which was the hat of that day, he actually deposits, it's very clever, he deposits coins into it secretly during the routine, so that you'll hear that clink as he reaches in the air and grabs those other coins and deposit it into the hat. Just because if you have an empty hat and you're just throwing coins inside, the audience at large would not be able to hear it and really, have that that illusion that's so, important in the original piece with the with the coin tail. He's doing this with a borrowed hat, I'm assuming, because he's doing it in a drawing room, and this is the drawing room magic, the real world section, where you are borrowing a lot of common day props. So just a little thing to be aware of. Let's keep going. This is such a great book. I really love this book, and honestly, I find new stuff in this book all the time. So one of the things that I started using for myself. So there's I believe it's on page 18 going to page 19, and it's a method for, you have a handkerchief and you lay it out on a table and you lay it out flat, and then you put a coin inside the middle and you make that coin vanish. And the way you make it vanish is you secretly have a piece of beeswax, and you are doing sleight of hand in combination with the beeswax, and it just works out really well. You kind of have to read it, but so for me, reading this was a perfect coin vanish for me, because I wanted to do it visually and just really have a coin vanish that I could do, where we put a coin on the table and it vanishes. And I sort of added some notes to the book. I did. And so you'll find them. And so the way that I do it, and there's many ways that you can do it, is I've experimented with the wax, which worked. But another thing that I did was I've experimented with magnets. And so as I fold that handkerchief over that coin, I play a little game with the spectator where so the coin is right in the middle. We fold each corner of the handkerchief over the coin, and then we pretend to move the coin a little bit inside. And I always show that my arms are empty, right? I haven't stolen anything away. Now I add my magnet to me, and I move over. The coin is magnetized. I ask them, which quadrant, which corner do you think the coin is under? And they choose that one. We pull it back slowly. And the way we pull it back is we just rub on the back of the handkerchief, the back of the fabric, to pull it back so that quarter opens, just pulls back, that quarter unfolds, and the coin is not shown to be there because it's with the magnet, you've moved it. And it's a very beautiful routine. And I sort of describe how I do this, and I steal out the coin at the same time, which leaves us to do a very beautiful thing at the end, which is there's still corners folded over on the handkerchief, and the coin is apparently inside. And you can have the spectator choose one, and then you can literally blow on those insides of the corner of the handkerchief and make them open just by the power of your breath. And it's just a beautiful vanish. Something that I've played with. I've never seen anybody else do it that way, but just wanted to mention it here. But it is a great coin vanish regardless of how you do it. It's just such a really, it's a beautiful visual. Let's keep going. What do we have here? More coin stuff. Oh, and then we get to a coin trick that revolves around heating up a coin with the palm of your hand. This is a method that I use. If you've seen the current version of my show, like if you've seen me performing my show in the last, since the beginning of the year, since January, you will know this piece. This is one of the coin pieces I do in the show, and I tell the story about Titanic Thompson and his dog, and how the dog has to find a coin in the lake after it's been marked. And I do a beautiful routine with it. But the method, and this is the trick is on page 24. It's a very, very old method. Goes back, I suspect, a few hundred years. I put my research in the notes. But it is a beautiful thing. And what it is I'll give you the most basic things. You basically have a bunch of coins out. You borrowed coins, and you have them select a coin, mark it, and they return that coin. You're able to find it. And the way that you're finding it is through the body of their heat being transferred to the coin. I also leave a little note in the text about Mellini. If you guys remember, during the Mellini book club live stream, I talked about how Mellini used this exact principle to do this trick with 3 borrowed coins. 3 gentlemen would each select a coin. They would mark it, throw it into the hat. There would be a bunch of coins in the hat as well. And by the temperature of the coin, Mellini could reach inside and give each gentleman his coin back. Great trick, great principle, very underutilized. And there's a lot of subtlety to working with it, just because it's so much on the edge of, you're in the danger zone when you use bold techniques like that. So there's a lot of subtleties that you have to employ. And but read it, try it out. If you want, we can talk about it. But it is a solid method. Further on, we talk about the coin vanishing in a glass. I forget what this trick is called. What is it called? It doesn't even have a name here. But it is a coin vanishing in a glass. Again, we talked about Mellini doing this. This is a great trick. I use it in combination with making a lady cry by squeezing her, and then we take it one step further. What happens if we make her cry too much? She vanishes, and she vanishes inside the glass. I have multiple stories for it. One that I use for my show that has nothing to do with the crying lady, but it's a great trick. So again, I leave notes in the book, so you guys can read that. But basically, the notes are very simple. They just cover where I get this prop and some of my advice. What you're using is a glass disc. Actually, I have mine right here. I have mine right here. I'll show you what it looks like. Be very careful not to lose these. So this is what it looks like. If you guys can see this. This is the disc. And all this is a watch face. This particular one is, ooh, is there a dent in it? I hope not. Shoot, I got a slight dent in it through use. But all it is a small disc, looks like this, and this one is pretty thick. I had it, I bought it, so it's literally the same diameter and thickness of a U.S. half dollar. So it is quite thick, and it's not as heavy, but it has a good weight. And this is the one that I have. It's the size of a U.S. quarter. Again, in terms of the diameter and thickness, these were very hard to source. And I talk about where I buy them in the notes. I bought them from a company called sells watch parts to watch stores. And they have a wide range of different stuff, but it comes in this little package. Probably there was another package, but you can see it says sapphire. And it has the diameter, the thickness, everything. Really, and I didn't know. So, what I was talking about in terms of sourcing material, I didn't know if this was going to work or not. And oftentimes, when I'm developing a new piece, I will do experiments and just buy different things to do research to see if something is good or not. Because if something is good, I'll keep it for the rest of my life. I just want the props that I use to really look as good as they can and feel as good as they can, and just work as well as they can. And this specific sapphire, you have to find the right glass. I do not have the glass here, but I have a shot glass. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere in this room. But I have a shot glass that matches it perfectly. And one of the things that they lie about in the old books is that how easy it is to do this trick, and also how visible it is. And it's not true. When you do this right with the right materials and the right glass, um, it disappears. It's gone. You can hold it up to your eye and literally be examining that shot glass like this from the bottom, from the top, like looking all the way, and you cannot see it. It's totally invisible. It's totally 100% invisible. Yeah, and this is something that they don't talk about in these old books. They sort of just. I feel like this is a trick that is written about in a lot of old magic books, but that nobody ever really tries, just because of the work involved in sourcing the props. Which is why I feel a lot of the explanations of the trick are just inadequate and lacking the detail that you need. I'm gonna actually do a whole thing on this trick. It's so good, it's such a powerful trick, but not today. I will say though, if you are looking into it, you need you don't need a handkerchief that is super thick, but it's good to have a handkerchief that has a little bit of texture to it, just because that glass is so smooth, and you don't want anybody to feel through the material of the handkerchief that they're grabbing onto a smooth disc. You don't want them to feel that. So Moving on. Also, David Roth does this trick. It's so good. Oh, this is funny. So, on the next page here, I believe this is page 28. They're talking about how to make your own folding coin. I do not recommend making your own folding coin. If you are a machinist and you have the tools to cut a coin and do that type of work, by all means, go for it, experiment. But otherwise, just buy a folding coin from a magic dealer. The ones that are available on the market now are excellent. They just look fantastic, and it's easy enough. And there's enough of a market where you can get great coin gimmicks. I actually don't have that much experience buying coin gimmicks, but there's a few names out there that stand above the rest, and I would try to get the best that you can afford. Make sure, though, that you know what piece of magic that you're going to be doing with it and that you actually plan to be doing it. I bought a coin gimmick once, which was a Toonie Looney gimmick in shell, which is Toonie Looney is a $1 and $2 here in Canada. And the gimmick is very well made, but I didn't have a proper routine for it, and I didn't really know what I was going to do for it, so I ended up not using it for years, and it was pretty expensive. It wasn't expensive as some of them, but it was still pretty expensive. So if you're investing in coins, just make sure that you have an idea of a routine that you really want to do. That's my best advice, and then buy the best coin possible. Have fun. I mean, coin gimmicks are amazing. I love playing with my friends' coin gimmicks. um, we are going to continue on. Oh, this is cool. So one of the things he describes here, this is on page 31, is doing the coin and bottle, a coin penetrating a bottle. And without going into the whole method, he uses a special cork with a gimmick. And the cork has like a little device in it that's holding the coin on top. So you can show the inside of the bottle, and everybody's seeing that the inside of the bottle is empty. Da, da, da. Yeah, and then you have that coin in your hand, you vanish it into the bottle, and as you're vanishing it into the bottle, you're actually releasing that little coin that's stuck on top of the cork, and it drops down into the glass. It's a really cool gimmick. He describes how to make it in here. I've never seen it. I had never heard of it outside of this book, so just interesting. Moving on. More coin magic. Oh, good. What does it say here? Oh, he's talking about things that can go wrong. Then I skip basically most of the coin tricks because there's so many. This is such a big book. But we get to chapter 3, which is tricks with common objects. A Japanese sugar trick, which is basically chink-a-chink. A rising blade to restore a piece of cotton that has been cut up. Oh, wait, those are two separate tricks. A rising blade. Oh, yes, a rising blade. Rising blade he has some silly tricks in his books. So you can really tell that it was written for people with no experience in magic. The rising blade is one of those silly pieces of magic where you have like an invisible thread, or I believe he uses a hair, and it's tied to a knife, and the knife is put into a glass, and it dances inside of the glass with the hair. Just fun little stuff that you could do to restore a piece of cotton that has been cut up into small pieces. Oh, to pass a ring from a handkerchief to a wand. And so these are very classic tricks. I mean, you've probably seen this stuff before, but it's his working on it. And it's very interesting. So the routine that he's talking about, passing the sugar cubes, many people know it as chink and chink. Uh, that was published in Stars of Magic, or the version with coins published by David Roth called the Matrix, the Coin Matrix. Um, it's in this book, and this might be more of a primitive version. I think it's pretty much the same. I haven't really gone through the routine and looked at each movement of the hands, but I think it's very similar to the regular chink a chink. But anyways, it's in this book. It's interesting. Talks about the history of it. There's a lot of Chinese magic in this book, actually. Uh, there's the great trick with the knives where you have the tiny squares of paper on knives. I believe this was also talked about in the Malini book. And you turn over the knife and you make the squares disappear and multiply and appear. Very cool little piece of magic. Um, read it for what it is. I think there's better versions, such as the one from, I don't know if it's Leipzig or if it's Malini's, but I remember reading a very good version in either the Malini book or maybe, I don't know. I don't know which book. It might have been the Malini book or Stars of Magic. I don't remember now. Confusing myself, but very good version. Uh, then we have more classics. The Rising Blade, which is what I was just telling you about the string. It's just so funny. The illustration, even for the Rising Blade, you see him putting the knife inside the blade, and you can actually see the string in the illustration. It's just like running from the knife to his arm and then going off the table. I don't really get that trick, but torn or restored piece of thread, or cut or restored thread, ring on wand, rings on wand. Very classic magic. This is all stuff that you still see today, which brings us to chapter 4, tricks with the cups and balls. How to conceal a cup, how to slip a cup under a cup unperceived, how to vanish a ball, phase 1 to 3, the manufactory, how to introduce large objects beneath the cup, bag for holding articles, hints, talk for the trick. So, again, he gives the details of the wand, the cups, the little cork balls. That's what I was looking for, cork balls. Let me make a note of this. I had written it down and then I had forgot cork balls. Because I'm working on my cups and balls and I want to trace down some old school cork balls. Sorry, that's just me thinking aloud. But yeah, he describes it being used with cork balls. The reason I don't like the balls today are they're like these crochet balls. Like, they're like these little sewn, they're crocheted. They're literally like woven balls, and they just look and feel weird. I would prefer a different type of ball. Just talking about these little tiny things that bother me with certain tricks, and it just inspires me to source out my own material. So, anyways, just throw that in there. But yeah, he describes the props, the cups. The cup needs a little recess on the bottom so that you can lay a ball on top of it and have it stay on the bottom of the cup. And then he just goes into the routine, the different vanishes, the techniques with the wand. It goes on and on. And the bag and the servant. Just a quick note on the bag and the servant. The traditional magician's bag. I don't know. I do know where I put mine. Mine is in my closet. But it's called the jabissier, and it's a little side bag. You sometimes see street performers wearing an apron they'll wear an apron in front, and it's like a pouch, and it holds their big loads. It holds their oranges or their lemons, whatever they're using, their fruit, and they're holding it, and the apron is tied around their waist. That is a newer version of the Jabissier. I don't like it as much. The Jabissier in itself was just a little side pocket that you would attach on the outside of your clothes. In a lot of old clothing, didn't have pockets, so they would attach outside pockets and strap them to their bodies. And you can still see some of these today. If you do a search for like an outside pocket or outside pouch, I don't know what you would search for, but they are still very popular. And I know in Europe, in some countries in Europe, such as Spain, they're very popular. They're sort of like these, I don't know what you call them. Oh, what is the modern term for it? That pouch that you wear in the front. My mind is going blank, but fanny pack, a fanny pack. They're sort of like modern day fanny packs, but um, this is the old school thing that magicians would wear. I have one. If you want to see the one that I have, it was actually given to me by Miguel Angogea. So if you know who that is, great coin worker from Sevilla, and he uses the same Jabissier I use. And if you want to look at photos of him performing, you'll see it on the side of him. He literally just has it strapped, and it's a little bag that just hangs off the side. It's very small. It maybe like this big, and it just contains anything you need to hold, and it has an opening so you can easily grab stuff, dish stuff, drop something that's palmed. You just drop your hand off to your side. You don't need to go into your pocket. You literally just flies into that open pocket. There's a lot of tricks and techniques to keep that pocket open when you need to be open, close it when you need it to be closed. There's a lot of secret work on it. It's not something that's very well known, but it's called the Jabissier. Mm, which brings us, oh, and before we get off on the cups and balls, he also talks about what you should bring uh, in terms of performing, and he talks about having your own table and stuff. But we'll talk about that later in the book. Chapter 5, tricks with handkerchiefs, burning a handkerchief in a small way, how to pull a handkerchief through the leg, the knot untied by magic, the confectioner handkerchief, feats with handkerchiefs. So again, this is all very classic stuff with handkerchiefs. I'd read through it, see if there's something you like. One of the great things about an old book like this is you will constantly find new things to enjoy and to discover and explore. I hadn't read this book for maybe, I want to say 3 years, give or take. And opening it up, a lot of it I recognize, but then there's some stuff that is just like totally new for me. And I know that I've read it before, but I've just forgotten it. So being able to rediscover things that you've sort of just glazed over, I find that with a lot of books. I did that with LaPaul with our reading of it. It constantly happens to me where I read something and discover something new and something old. So, chapter 6, we are on Chinese tricks, which encompasses a new marble trick, fire eating, the final effect, the butterfly trick, the fan, how to make the butterflies, how to keep them in the air. So again, these are very classic Chinese tricks, Chinese style tricks that you see Chinese performers doing in the early 20th century, maybe late 19th century. I don't want to comment too much on them since you guys probably know all about them, and I don't have anything to add other than these are very good versions, and it's amazing that he documented all this. Brings us to chapter 7, tricks at table. How to cause a wine glass with wine in it to vanish. Okay, so this is actually a funny trick. This is something that I can imagine like a Danny Ortiz doing, or a like a Juan Tamariz or Malini. Uh, and what it is you are just at the dinner table and you make a wine glass vanish. You're doing a toast and your wine glass vanishes, and then you produce it from a person beside you. Uh, it's a pretty funny routine. It's extremely bold. It's sort of more of a, I don't know if it's a magic trick. It's a magic trick, but it's not presented as a magic trick. It's sort of just a shocking piece of magic that happens out of the blue, and you can't draw too much attention to it as he describes, or else there will be no trick. So I don't know if it's magic. If you're not really setting up those conditions, the magic is just happening. You fall into a weird gray area where some people it might have a great effect, or there might not be an effect. It sort of feels like a Uri Geller type thing, where Uri Geller's just uh, what Uri Geller would do. This is really funny. Uri Geller would be in a room with someone, and he'd wait until they stopped paying attention to him and they were looking in another direction, and he would secretly have something, whether that was a pair of keys or a water bottle or a camera or anything. He would just steal something earlier, and as soon as they weren't looking, he'd be doing something, reading a book, whatever. As soon as he noticed that person wasn't looking, he'd throw that object, he'd throw it in the air, and it would land across the room near that person, and he would be shocked, and he would say, "Oh my God, what was that?" And the person would say, "I don't know. There's a camera here on the floor. What the heck?" He'd say, "Oh, I just saw it out of the corner of my eye, dropping out of the ceiling. It literally dropped out of the ceiling. I saw it forming. I saw the ceiling was solid, and then it slowly came through the ceiling, dropped. This is the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen." So this is sort of what Uri Geller would do. This is sort of what it reminds me of, making a wine glass disappear from your hands. It's really silly. You could get a great effect out of it, or you could get no effect out of it. But it sort of crosses a line, being like, there's nobody paying attention, so is it a magic effect? You're sort of just messing with people, I think, at a certain point. Uri Geller would have a lot of stuff like this. He'd wait until someone wasn't paying attention, and he'd jump into another room. So he'd jump off the couch and onto the table. And the first, as he knew the person was coming into the room, the person would come into the room. He'd time it so they're just turning that corner as he's literally has just jumped in the air and he's about to land on the table, and he'd land on the table. Oh no, I teleported. I don't know how I got here. What just happened? Oh my goodness. It's a little absurd. It's a little obscene, but you can get an effect out of it. So tricks at the table. Going to the next piece: how to cause a plate or other large article to vanish. How to perform the cup and ball trick with plates and bread pellets. The die trick, magical surgery, a dessert of corks. Dessert of corks is really silly. Dessert of corks is actually, I'm just gonna read it. It's so silly. I kind of have to read it. Um, let's go down. Where is it? Changing die. There's a lot of good tricks here, but I'm sort of just going through and finding things in my amusement. Corks. This is great. So this is what he writes. Corks are generally handy at a dinner table. Uh, and being easily palmed, form excellent media for small conjuring. The cork should be held at the tips of the first and fourth fingers lengthwise, and then it palms right across the hands. The sharp edges giving a splendid hold, especially as the article is so light. Corks are very easily swallowed, being either placed, apparently, in the mouth by the hand palming them, or else put into the other hand first, who then used to regale himself at a friend's house by a dessert of corks, brought on a sauce boat or soup tureen, especially chosen because it concealed the hand when it was thrust in. The performer continually took out corks, dropping the ones palmed as he did so, until he had apparently eaten a dozen. A good deal of natural chewing should be indulged in, and the changes continuously run upon the various palms and passes time the book. Finally, the performer says he can eat no more, as he is full up. As evidence of this, he extracts from his ear the last cork he ate, and after apparently replacing this in the bowl, he is taken with a spasm, and another cork taken out of the mouth, the supposition being that it had been unable to find room below. It is, it is of course rolled into the partial, the open lips of the palm. Is quite open. It is quite open to the performer to reproduce a number of corks from his person that way. Uh, yeah. So there's that, which is just silly. There's some silly stuff in this book, but that's how all these old magic books are. There's like some good effects, but they're mixed in with the silly effects. By the way, one of the most silly effects, I wonder if it is here. It's not here. Oh well. There's an effect having to do with eating an orange. That brings us to the next chapter, which is just card tricks. A very wide variety of card tricks, different techniques, the pass, the palm, different shuffles. There's a lot of techniques here. You're going to have to sort of sit down and go through it. So one thing to note, very important to note, is he talks about doing the one-handed pass, which I left a note on, I believe, somewhere, if I can find it. It's weird, I'm not finding my note. I know it's in here somewhere. But he leaves a note on the one-handed pass. And he talks about, and what we know is the one-handed pass, we call the Charlier cut, or the Charlier pass. And the usual cover that you see magicians use is they have the deck in their left hand, and they reach over forward with their right hand to grab something. And as they're reaching over with their left hand, they're doing that pass underneath that sleeve, underneath that arm, as the arms cross over. He talks about, in this book, the correct way to do it, which is totally in the open. You're doing the start of the Charlier pass where the deck is held open, and the reason you're holding the deck open is you're having a selected card. Somebody selected a card and they're returning it to the deck. So you have that hold open for them so they can return. You have that the deck is split in the middle. You have it hold it to them so they can replace their card right in the middle easily, and you do the cut, not closing, but you do the cut, returning those two halves, switching those two halves as you turn your arm to the other direction. So you're having that card replaced. The deck is in like a Charlier type position where, so you have the deck. How is Charlier? I'm not very good at it. Oh gosh. I thought it would demonstrate Charlier. I'm going to try to do this for you. So you have the deck open. Oh gosh, you guys can't see anything about it. Anyways, I'm not gonna try. You do the Charlier pass as you're turning over, transposing those two halves focus on the illustrations. It's all very well illustrated in the book. Pay attention to what he's saying. Having those two packets separated as when you're doing the Charlier cut. Instead of doing the Charlier cut, you cover the Charlier cut through that big sweeping motion. And the reason you're doing that motion is you're saying, here, put your card in the deck. Everybody can see. We're going to lose the card in the deck. You've done that shift, and now as you stop, you slowly then close that packet, those two packets, and complete that cut. They think that that card is lost in the deck when really it's at the top of the deck now. Great technique. It's a subtlety that nobody knows about. I first heard about this subtlety at, I believe, MagicCon. I believe Bill Kalush did a talk on, I forget what he did a talk on. I think he probably did a talk on Ask Alexander, which is their search engine, their magic search engine. I think he did it on Ask Alexander. Maybe it could have been another talk though, but I believe it was at MagicCon. I heard him talking about the Charlier cut, and it was a great idea. Nobody in the room really knew about it. It's sort of this obscure thing, which is just a reminder for me. Just always look through this old literature. It has these gems. Even if we're familiar with a lot of the tricks, there's oftentimes little details in the techniques and otherwise hints that go overlooked. And what I'm trying to do is raise the level of magic, and part of that has to do with doing a lot of research. So don't be afraid to do research. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. All right, so let's keep going. We get to a card trick, page 103, and this is a card trick we'll actually probably be talking about next month in the book club, as we'll be going through the expert of the card table. This is a trick called, I don't know, I forget what it's traditionally called. I want to say it's the cavorting aces, but that's probably wrong. It's a trick where you put two red aces in the middle of the deck, two black aces on the outside of the deck, one being on the top, one being on the bottom, and then the red aces in the middle magically transpose with the black aces on the outside of the deck. They transpose. This is a very classic trick. I add my notes on this. This is a trick that was also popularized. It's not from Paul Curry, but it was also popularized by Paul Curry, and it's in his book. Paul Curry had a whole routine around it. I only like certain phases, so I've played with that phase a lot just because I like that principal routine. Oh, I think my dog is having a little nightmare. I wish you guys could see him right now. He's just laying down sleeping, but he's like, his legs are a little moving, and he's like, hee. Anyways, he should be probably chasing rabbits or another dog. I don't know. His little paws are moving. Isn't that funny? I am tired. I wish I could have a nap like him right now. I did not sleep well last night. There were people outside blasting music and other dogs barking outside. My dog kept waking up in the middle of the night to bark back at them. Not fun. So I had a note, page 103 on this trick. I talk about how I do it, and actually how I do it is how they describe in this book, but just because I use a turnover pass in this, and basically I just talk about the alignment of the deck and how I'm holding the deck at the beginning of the routine. And how you hand out that deck when you're doing this routine. So again, that's page 103, 104. Definitely check that out. Great routine. What is the routine called? Let me find the title of the trick. Congenial Aces. It's called the Congenial Aces. It actually starts on page 102. Definitely check that out. What else do we have here? There's a bunch of card tricks. A lot of technique. Change. He talks about the top change. I'm not a fan of his top change, but it is what it is. Then he has a weird top change. I've never seen this top change in person. So there's a top change on page 111. The illustration number is figure 38. If you want, check that out. That is a weird top change. I've never seen that top change in my life. He I cannot describe what I'm looking at in terms of the illustration. He's holding the cards in his left hand and he's pulling the card from the back. It's a weird top change. It is a weird top change. And the finger positions are very weird. I've never seen it. Again, it may look great. I don't know what I'm looking at. So check that out. Page 111. Very odd. Okay, we go to the palming. Keep going. The slide. The force. Again, very classic versions of tricks. La carte generale, the sympathetic cards, which is sort of like a cards across type routine. Let's see. Per meeting card. This is all really good stuff. Again, play with all this stuff. It's just fun. And one of the reasons, as I scroll through this, looking for the next thing to talk about, one of the reasons, and the reason I have to scroll through is such a big book. The reason why I think it's important to familiarize yourself with all this material, even if you end up doing none of it, you probably will do a few tricks from it, because the tricks are really good and they're not very well known today. But just having a baseline in magic is such an important thing. Having a foundation where you're familiar with what's out there. You can't really develop a proper taste unless you've had exposure to what's out there. It's like food. If all you've been to is one restaurant, and so you're only used to like, Italian food or pizza, and so you only know about that, and it's like there's a whole world of food outside of that, but you don't know about it. So you're just like ignorant. Whereas you could literally eat everything, just eat everything and be familiar with everything. It just gives you a different baseline, appreciation for stuff, and you can reference stuff. So, it's one of the things I love doing, reading. Probably people don't love reading as much as me. This is a book I just picked up. I had read it previously, but I didn't have a copy. I think I gave away my copy, or I let somebody borrow it. They never gave it back. Kind of pisses me off, but this is a great book by Jim Steinmeier, The Glorious Deception, The Double Life of William Robinson, a.k.a. Chung Ling Soo. Great book. Great book. Billy Robinson, fantastic magician, really underrated. You have to read about his life. It's just incredible. We go on. We have the chameleon card, traveling cards. We have the assembly, which is assembly of cards. Oh, it's so annoying to scroll down all these pages. This is like literally a wall of text. I cannot believe that I made this book into a PDF. It's pretty insane. Game of Napoleon. All right. Oh, sorry, I just had to scroll through the card magic. We're now at part 2, grand or stage magic. And in this part of the book, he opens up with general remarks, which is preparations, where you're performing and to whom, how to give articles that are going to be held by the spectator, punishment for meddlers on the repetition of tricks, rehearsing, patter, all these things. He talks about Confederates, all very interesting stuff. And he devotes chapter. Oh, my dog is really tired. He just got up and then he's like, "Nah, I'm tired." He just threw himself back down. The table and dress. The table, the height, the body, the shelf, the legs, vanishing and changing traps. The side tables. So the table that he's describing in this, virtually nobody uses today. This is a table with traps. Another thing that he describes, which is pretty useful, that I have not seen on a lot of tables, I've seen people who have portable ones. For example, Jan Frisch has a portable sort of servant shelf type thing that he's able to attach to a table, and it creates a little shelf underneath the pretend this is the front of a table going this way. This is the audience. This is the table. This is the performer. You have a little shelf underneath the table that attaches onto the table that you can hold all these props without the audience seeing. Um, so he describes how to make that and the importance of it. He also describes how to make a table with traps. This is a table with literally trap holes in it, with springs and different things to keep those traps closed. Um, Virtually nobody uses a table with traps these days. And we can talk about why that is. One is the manufacturing of it is prohibitive in terms of the cost, the materials, expertise. People don't really know how to make that stuff anymore, even though they describe it in these old books. Nobody is going through the process of making these tables. They're extremely complicated to make for the most part. And there's nobody, you can't just hire somebody easily these days to make a table. I will say, to hide the traps, he talks about having a checkerboard pattern on the table, sort of like a chessboard pattern, where you're having black and white squares. And what this does is it allows you to have these traps, these pieces of the tables that have slits cut in and go down and up and like either descend or they either go straight down. And these traps are what he's talking about here and how to hide them through the pattern of the table. It's pretty complicated stuff, and how to use it, different. It's complicated. If you want to read about it, you can. I'll not stop you. Um, it's just, I feel like it's something more for parlor. So, there's that. Ugh. Talks about vesting, pockets and vests and different things, the clothes of a magician. Very interesting stuff. Definitely read it. Clothing and table. Again, as times change, we sort of change our environment and where we perform. That isn't to say, though, that you have to completely getting rid of the idea of a table. One of the greatest performers, close-up performers, I believe, of the last century was Del Rey. And Del Rey had a fold-up table. It was sort of like one of those tables that you see at a school or something. It just has legs and it can fold up, and he could fit it in the trunk of his car. It had metal legs and like a plastic type top. Just looked like a regular table, like a very cheap table. But inside, he had all these electronics and electromagnetics and different stuff going on inside the table that allowed him to do Some amazing stuff, both with cards and with dice. So definitely don't, even though you might look at like, oh, I'm not going to build a whole table, you might want to build something uh, similar to a table. Like my little boards here, these are non-gimmicked, but I do plan to make versions in the future that have gimmicks. Sorry, I'm just checking out what's going on outside. Oh, just it turns out to be somebody watering their plants. No big deal. Emergency averted. And they have a dog. Do I know this dog? I don't know. Very cute dog. I don't know if I know this neighbor. Anyways, sorry guys, getting a little distracted sometimes. Chapter 11, Sleights and Properties for General Use. How to produce articles from the wand. Articles produced from the persons of the company, vanishing objects from the hands, exchanging articles, mesmerizing a dove, marking a card in course of performing, passing handkerchief over flame of candle, the conjurer's shuffle, the devil's handkerchief, coin handkerchief, flying ring, magician's egg. So I will leave a note here. Actually, I already left a note I believe, the devil's handkerchief. Let me just make sure that this is the right trick, though, the devil's handkerchief. It may be another trick that I'm referring to. No, it looks like a different trick that I was referring to. Not this one. But there is a trick in here, which we will get to soon, that has a very similar name, and it was performed by Herman. It's a beautiful, beautiful trick. And you would have a bouquet of roses that a woman is holding, and it's literally a bouquet of roses, and you do the rising cards from there, where mysteriously cards not only appear in the bouquet, but they rise out of the bouquet. And it's described in this book, and there's a lot of detail given to it. I thought it was that for a second. Oh, here it is, Herman's bouquet. Let's actually go right to it, and because there's so much to talk about here, and I will not get through this whole book. This is a 400-page book. This is like 1/3 of Tarbell. It's ridiculous. Where are we? Herman, come on. I really do want to talk about this Herman trick, because it was fascinating. It's like one of those things. Oh, where is it? Herman. Sorry, I must have skipped it. Here we are. So this is called Herman's bouquet, or the obliging bouquet. This trick resembles to a great extent the ascending cards, and was one of Herman's many masterpieces. As performed by him, it outshone in exquisite neatness and effect all other card tricks, but the amount of skill and daring necessary to carry it properly through is considerable, and persons of a nervous or uncertain dispositions had better consider this well before they attempt it. At the same time, those with the requisite skill and nerve may earn incalculable glory by including this trick occasionally in their programs. The description of it, never before made public, is as follows. So this is a big deal. This has never been published before Sleight of Hand. And I don't remember reading about this book, and I've read books on Herman. I don't remember reading about this book. I may have passed over it, but here it is. A bouquet of real flowers is handed to a lady in the audience, and 3 or 4 cards are then chosen from the pack. The cards are made to disappear. One by one, they're seen to rise from the bouquet, which is still held by the lady. Um, so just think about that for a second. That is an amazing effect. It's an amazing effect. We talk about all the time here. We talk about using spectators to make your magic more powerful. And it's always something that bothered me about the rising cards, where you're always so far away from the audience, and there's always like a disconnect in between the audience and you. And you just have these cards floating from this vase or this goulet or the card box. It's just disconnected from the spectators. They're not close. It's not a close-up trick. It's a grand piece of magic. And here's Herman using elements of close-up magic, for example, making the spectator hold the props. And he's having, I mean, just imagine the woman's holding this bouquet of flowers, and the cards not only vanish from the magician's hand, they then float out of this bouquet that the woman is holding. It's incredible. It really is. So please, please, please check that out in the book. It's just great. Moving on. Tricks with handkerchiefs and gloves. All classic stuff. I won't go through it all. Keep going through. Tricks with coins. This is all coin tricks. It's different than the coin tricks earlier in the book. These are more designed to be presented in the sense of grand magic on something on stage. He also talks about when you produce coins, if you're ever going to use coins or other objects, depending on the object, it might be worth considering producing it. So he talks about producing these coins from a candle. This is very beautiful. I've seen done before. I always find it very beautiful and mysterious. And a wide variety of coin tricks and gimmicks, boxes and tubes and all sorts of stuff. Then takes us to miscellaneous. This is a lot of tricks that use specific and specialized props. These are unlikely to be done by most people today, but it's worth going through. I know some people, like me, are interested in recreating some of this older magic. Part of that is building some of these old props. I have a friend, I can't talk about him or his routine because it's so beautiful and he wants me to keep a secret, but he took a trick that is 100 years old. And it's in books from 100 years ago. Nobody has ever seen it. Nobody has ever seen it probably for 100 years. And he has taken this trick and he's rebuilt the props, he's redesigned them, made it, and it is unbelievable. And it's a card trick and it's totally unique. You've never seen anything like it. I can't say anything more about it because he wants to use it in a show and he wants it to be kept a secret for now, but there are people working on this stuff. So do yourself a favor, check out this old stuff, even if the props and stuff sound weird. Don't, try to always look at the spirit of the effect and what is being accomplished. And if it's something that you want to accomplish, because if it is, even if those props and so forth don't exist today, you can make them and you can make that piece new. And once you make a piece new, something that hasn't been done in a long time, that piece becomes your piece. And, you'll become associated with that trick. So just something to keep in mind. Sorry for all the yawning. I am tired. Keep going. There's a lot of stuff in this book. There's a lot of stuff that I'm just skipping over just because I didn't make any notes about it. That doesn't mean that it's bad or not interesting. It just means that I don't have anything to say on the subject. And when you're dealing with a 400, more than 400 page book, I don't think I don't have the time, and you probably don't have the time for me to comment on everything. He devotes the whole chapter to the cornucopian hat, which is a hat that used to be a classic magic trick, not really seen today. This is a hat on stage that would have everything produced from it: cannonballs, flowers, doves, live animals, you name it, it would be produced under this cup. Cornucopian hat. Takes us to the next chapter: tricks with watches and livestock. Interesting stuff. Nothing I'm going to get into just because it's too much. We are now at sham mesmerism, clairvoyance, blindfolded feats, imitation, second sight, or spiritualism. This is very interesting. He gives the small history of Dr. Sleight and the Sleights. Very interesting to read. He talks about the apparatus that's used as well: second sight, perambulating walking stick, the talking glass, the spirit bouquet, fiery hands, the electric touch, the animated skull. So very classic spiritualism type effects that he teaches. They're all pretty standard, but it's good to have. As I said, there's always these little details that will pop out at you that you will not have known about before. And then we get near to the end of the book. He's giving the final instructions, which is just him basically telling people how to perform, how to advertise, and takes us all the way to the end of the book. So it's quite a whirlwind, and it's a big book. I very quickly went through all of it, and the reason I did it is because of the time constraints of the book club. I don't want to ever bore you guys to death. I want to give you what I know about the best way that I can. As I said, this is a book with a lot of material. You could build a very solid set with the material in this book. But most likely what you'll do is you'll find probably a gem, probably 2 or 3 gems that you will add to your current performing repertoire from this book. That's my feeling. I don't know what those pieces will be for you, but I believe that you will find those and love them because it is really great magic. And it's so weird. The angle of my bookshelf. I just noticed that it was crooked, and then I straightened it when my laptop isn't straight. Just wondering about the angles of my bookshelf now. I can't move it because it has all this stuff on it. And anyways, what I was saying about the book. What I think is you'll find 2 or 3 gems that you'll add to your performing repertoire. Outside of that, there will probably be in between 1 to 2 dozen ideas that pop into your mind reading through this book. So I would recommend not only read it, but read it with a notebook or a notepad, because you'll read something interesting, but it won't be interesting enough for you to use, and you'll forget about it and move on. So get a little notepad, and anytime that you have a little thought or idea or whatever, keep a note. I have a few notebooks. You can see them right here. You see right under this red book, this white, black. Those 2 black notebooks and that white notebooks are my magic notebooks, and those contain a lot of ideas that I've had throughout the year. I usually carry one with me when I'm traveling or when I'm reading, and these are for the most part unorganized notes. I wish they were a little bit more organized, but it's nice to have those unorganized notes because you just want to have feelings and ideas and notes that resonate with you as a person, as a performer. And you just want to have those all somewhere. Even if you don't have anything to do with them right now, just leave them there. It'll stay. My notes have been growing for a few years. Every once in a while, I'll go through them and look through them, and I'll recognize my old notes, and I'll get inspired by an idea or a visual or a sentence, just something, or a prop. Uh, I'll be inspired, and it'll eventually develop into a routine. So again, do that with this book. Have fun with it. It's a book that's been very popular, reprinted many times. The second edition that you've received is probably the best. One of the best editions. I know that once they got to the third edition, they added some more stuff. They also may have removed some stuff. I hate when people put out a new edition of a book and then remove stuff, especially a magic book. That's really annoying. Like Darren Brown did that. Darren Brown did that with some of his books where he added some stuff in the first editions. Like there was really good stuff in the first edition, and then he thought it was too good, and he pulled the material for the subsequent editions, which is super annoying. Like, who does that? Come on, Darren. Who does that? Not cool. Um, but yeah, second edition, very good edition. Check it out. Let me know what you think. Let's have a discussion about some of the pieces. Again, I'm available to discuss anything. Also, another thing, when you guys watch this, I realize that this live stream has been a little bit dead, and I don't know if that's me not letting you guys know what time the live stream is going to be, so you can't watch it live. I've been posting inside of the Patreon, giving like little updates. This is when we're going to do it. So I don't know if you guys are seeing that or if something just came up in your schedule. Either way, let me know. I'm going to contact you guys either way just to catch up, because I do want you guys to be able to be here and not miss it if possible. If you guys are busy, that's life. I totally get it and understand. But if not, I'd love to have you here so we can go through the stuff together. That is about all I have to say on that book. Next month, we are doing for our book club, The Expert of the Card Table. I am also working on a PDF for that right now. I'm probably, it'll be ready. It'll be ready in a few weeks. Not rushing it just because I have other stuff to do at this particular moment, but it will be ready in a few weeks. What else is going on? There was a free PDF for you guys to read. H.G. Wells, The Man Who Could Work Miracles. That's on Before Magic. There's also going to be some other free PDFs, fun short stories, different stuff like that coming soon. I don't like to give dates and stuff just because everything is constantly changing. But do keep an eye out for that stuff. As for this room is almost getting ready to film some DVDs. I am having a few more chairs being delivered this next week. I have two very nice mirrors, one going on this side, one going on this side, just to get rid of this boring white wall, and some more stuff coming in, chairs, little furniture things. And the way that it will be, right here is the coffee table. So we'll have the spectators, either one sitting beside me or two sitting on this side, two sitting on this side, and it'll be really fun. We'll be performing, teaching. There'll be spectators, and we'll be creating those instructional videos. So really fun. Also, on the other stuff, that trick that we're talking about with the discs, the glass discs, that is a trick that I'm planning to release with the props and everything. So I don't have news on it right now because we're just in the planning stages. Um, but that is going to be something you're going to be able to buy soon from me, so you don't have to worry about searching for the right materials and doing all the research yourself. I've done the research. I've spent all my money and all my time searching for this stuff, and that will be a series of instructional videos, not a DVD. I don't think a DVD. It'll be an instructional video that will come with the gimmicks packaged, and so you'll be able to perform that soon. One of the classics in Magic, totally just underrepresented today as a performable piece. Um, other than that, not much else to say. I can give you a whole breakdown of what's been going on, but you guys know what's going on. I'm just keeping busy, working hard, doing this stuff, doing all the other stuff that I do. Going to be doing a few shows in China coming up. I've sort of been taking it easy with the tours for the last little while because I've got my dog, and also I've just been tired of traveling around the world. I do have some upcoming trips around the world very soon, so stay tuned for that. We'll also be posting a video. I'll be posting a video of a talk and performance that I gave at EG with Eric Mead. So that is something I'm very excited about. I have the video. I'm going to be posting it very soon. So keep an eye out for that. That's a good one. That is a really good one. Other than that, I'm severely lacking sleep because of the aforementioned series of events that took place this last evening. So I might be taking a nap after this. I don't know. We'll see. Thank you guys for joining me as usual. Really happy to be here with you guys. We're slowly growing this, and people are hearing about it. The word of mouth is growing, and I will see you guys in the next one. Please read the book. Take your time. It's a big book, 400 pages, but do read it. It is a fantastic book. So enjoy it. Hope you guys get as much out of it as I have, and I will see you guys hopefully soon. Peace. Goodbye. Adios. Oh, and for my friends in Poland, if you have a chance, watch a movie called the Polka King. It's a movie that came out with Jack Black, where he plays a Polish immigrant to the U.S. and it's a comedy movie. It's very funny, very funny. But I thought you guys would like that, so check it out, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.